Hey guys, how's it going? I don't think anybody's here yet. I'm going to make sure that my stuff is live like it's supposed to be. Hold on. That's some creepy music. Oh dear. I'm going to have to change that scary music. Hey Olga, how's it going? I was trying to play some music. It's also pretty creepy, but a little bit less creepy than that one. Hey Maribel, how's it going? I'm just going to give it a couple minutes here for everyone to get here. So how's everyone doing this weekend? Everybody having a good weekend? Hope everyone's doing well. It's another cold, drizzly day in Anchorage. And of course, I washed my car right before it starts pouring down rain. I don't like to be messy, but I hate organizing. Like I always think, oh, this is going to be so great when I organize everything finally. And then I organize everything and then I can't find anything. Yeah, I think it's only like 50 degrees here in Anchorage. I think this week it should be closer to 70 at some point. With one body, then another, then another. In the spring of 2025, the quiet towns of New England began to change. First, a woman was pulled from the Norwalk River. Then, a skull appeared in the woods of Plymouth. A few days later, a suitcase was found. Inside, the dismembered remains of another woman. Police called them coincidences. Locals whispered another word: serial. Over the next 3 months, 13 bodies were discovered across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Some missing for weeks, others just hours. Some were clearly murdered, others simply dead. Now the latest name has shaken the region. Adriana Suazo, just 21 years old, found lifeless in a wooded patch of Milton, Massachusetts. No visible injuries, no answers. Is this the latest victim in a disturbing pattern or something more complex? Welcome to Timeless Mysteries Live. Today, we will break down every victim, every timeline, every location. We follow the forensic trail, the family grief, the theories ranging from a roaming predator to a seasonal spike in deaths. Authorities deny any connection, but residents across New England feel it in their bones. This isn't over, and someone out there knows more. The Milton Mystery, 13 lives, one question. Timeless Mysteries Live. You don't want to miss this.
Hey baby, all I want is to be loved by you.
like we had a couple other people here. I was hoping there'd be a few more of you guys join. I think next time I'm going to say, "Oh, I've got this Chris Watts thing," and then maybe everyone will show up, and then get sucked into the conversation. Anyway. Yeah, the good thing about I don't know, it's like weird the daylight. It's gonna be like daylight until almost midnight in Anchorage. If you go further north, it's like it'll be daylight until like 3 a.m. and you'll only get like an hour or two of nighttime, and it's not even really nighttime. But here in Anchorage, it's about 11:30, 12 o'clock before the sun sets, and we only got a couple more weeks until it starts getting shorter and shorter. And the winter is really tough because it's so dark all the time. It's good for sleeping. It's not so good for getting stuff done. All right, guys. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and just get started. Nobody else shows up. I'm sorry. You know, it's more fun, I think, when more people are here hanging out. And yeah, winter, I don't know. Like, I still got to work in the winter, but it's just really hard. Um, Probably about by February, you're just so sick and tired of every day just being dark outside. It's weird. You wake up, go to work, it's dark. You get out of work, you come outside, and it's dark. You know, not like dark, like getting dark, but dark, dark, like 10:30 at night, dark. Um, it's just weird. In the summer, I have to like set an alarm to remind myself to get ready for bed. Otherwise, I'll be up until like 3 o'clock and realize, oh crap, I got to wake up in about 3 hours and then have a terrible day. So, anyways, guys, I guess we'll go ahead and just kind of go through this. You know I've talked about this New England serial killer before. And then there was a murder that happened, and they caught somebody. You know, one of the bodies that they were talking about was like, "Oh, we found someone, so it can't be a serial killer. This guy is a suspect in one of these murders, and blah blah blah." So I kind of stopped thinking about it because I thought, well, dang, they're going to start finding all of these, killers, but on June 1st, another body appeared. So I'll just go ahead and go through this thing that I have. I don't really know the best way to. I've got a lot of information that I can go through. It's just hard to remember it all and to just, spout it off. I think if this was just a podcast and you didn't see me, it'd be a lot easier for me to just read through this stuff. But one more thing before we get started is, did anyone have anything exciting happen over the weekend, last week? Birthdays, graduation, sporting events? Nothing? Anyone hear any new news about any true crime stuff? I hear Chris Watts has a girlfriend in prison. Ah, that's the one bad thing about baseball. There's always rain. I grew up in the Midwest, and we had the best rainstorms, but it would just like your whole baseball field would turn into a flash flood, basically. So in the spring of 2025, which is still now, it's still spring until June 20th or 21st, right? Um, so in the spring of 2025, the quiet towns of New England began to change. First, a woman was pulled from the Norwalk River. Then a skull appeared in the woods of Plymouth. A few days later, a suitcase was found inside were the dismembered remains of another woman. Police called them coincidences. Locals whisper another word: serial. Over the next 3 months, 13 bodies were discovered across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Some missing for weeks, others just hours. Some were clearly murdered, others simply dead. And I think I'm looking at the wrong thing, guys. Sorry. Just kidding. I was like, wait a second, this sounds so familiar. I didn't remember this was my script for the short that I played at the beginning. Hang on, let me pull this up. Ah, this is more like it. Yeah, this is the thing. Sorry, guys. Here, I'll change this to this or this. There. Early morning light filtered through the trees as a passerby made a grisly discovery in the quiet Boston suburb of Milton. On June 20, wow, I'm thinking of summer already. On June 1st, just a couple days ago, a lifeless body of 21-year-old Adriana Suazo was found lying in a wooded patch just off of Central Avenue. There were no obvious signs of trauma on her body, no gunshot wounds, no stab marks, only the eerie stillness of death. She had grown up in Boston. She had no known reason to be in Milton that day, deepening the mystery of her final hours. The neighborhood, a place accustomed to violence, was left reeling as police cordoned off the area. For investigators and residents alike, a haunting question hung in the pine scented air. How did a young woman with her whole life ahead of her end up dead on this wooded path? Elsewhere across New England, springtime had brought not renewal, but a series of grim discoveries. In small towns, in quiet parks and rivers, along bike trails, bodies had been turning up without any obvious explanation. By the time Suazo's body was found in just a couple of days ago, at least a dozen unexplained deaths have been surfacing across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, even as far north as Maine. Each case was its own puzzle. A missing woman's remains found months after she'd vanished, an unidentified skull in the woods, dismembered body found in a suitcase. The pattern, if it was a pattern, seemed to be bodies appearing in remote or unexpected places, often discovered by chance. Fear has begun to spread through the communities in this area. You can hear people talking about it on online forums and social media places like here on YouTube and TikTok. There might be a serial killer lurking, preying on victims. Neighbors swapped anxious whispers about the latest find. Local headlines spoke of a New England serial killer, a New England mystery. Spring has unfolded with a chilling rhythm of tragedy. Welcome to Timeless Mysteries. Please like and subscribe. Today, we're going to be examining the disturbing string of bodies and discoveries that have been unfolding across New England over the last couple months. New England towns where the bodies were found. Um, oh, hold on. The first alarm came in early March 2025. With the thaw of winter on March 6th, police divers in Norwalk, Connecticut, pulled out the body of 35-year-old Paige Fannin from the cold, rain-swollen Norwalk River. Fannin had been reported missing from her home in West Islip, New York, a day earlier, and investigators had traced her last known movements to Wilton, Connecticut. In fact, local authorities had been actively searching the area when they found clothing and personal items abandoned on the riverbank, a haunting prelude to the discovery of her body in the fast moving current. Heavy rains the night before had turned the river swift and murky, as if trying to spirit away the evidence of what had happened. To this day, Paige Fannin's cause of death still remains publicly undisclosed. There were no immediate signs of foul play announced, but the very fact that she vanished from one state and was found dead in another was enough to raise suspicions. Here was a woman who had driven across state lines shortly before her death, only to end up submerged in a Connecticut river. Was it a tragic accident, a suicide, or something more sinister? The questions are swirling through the community of Norwalk. They've reached as far back to Long Island, where her loved ones are mourning her life. That same day, on March 6th, nearly 150 miles to the northeast, another chilling discovery emerged that seemed ripped from a crime thriller. In the quiet woods of Plymouth, Massachusetts, a hunter stalking a deer came across what he first thought was an animal bone on the forest floor. Upon closer inspection, the truth hit him with a surge of dread. It was the top half of a human skull. The jaw and the nasal bones were missing, and the skull had clearly been there for some time. Withered by the elements, shocked, the hunter alerted authorities. As detectives scoured the wooded area off Route 3 in Plymouth, they found no immediate clues to the skull's identity. No missing person report matched the remains. No quick answers were forthcoming. The partial skull was undoubtedly human, but whose skull is it? And how had it ended up in that remote thicket? In an instant, a peaceful stretch of New England woodland was transformed into a forensic scene. Yellow tape fluttered among the pines, evidence markers placed where life had once been. The discovery of the unidentified Plymouth skull deepened the unease that was beginning to grip the region. Two bodies found on the same day, just 100 miles away. The string of cases truly ignited public attention in the weeks that followed, as more bodies surfaced in rapid succession. On March 19th, in Groton, Connecticut, a coastal town known more for its Navy submarine base than violent crime, a groundskeeper near the local cemetery noticed a suitcase discarded in a patch of brush. Inside, gruesomely, were the dismembered remains of a female victim. Police would later identify her as 58-year-old Suzanne Wormser, a local woman who had been reported missing. This case had all the hallmarks of a calculated homicide: dismemberment, a body left in a piece of luggage, and an attempt to conceal the evidence. The brutality of the discovery sent shockwaves through the communities, and rumors began to grow. The suitcase killer. And if you think about it, just recently we had the other suitcase incident where a woman stuffed her husband into a suitcase. it's just I don't know, like, uh, I just can't imagine somebody putting somebody in a suitcase. So what do you guys see when you connect the dots between these discoveries? Do you think 150 miles is close enough that the 2 could be related, possibly? Because I kinda lean towards 150 miles is a little bit far for, a serial killer to travel to hide a body. Could a masterful predator be counting on us to dismiss these deaths as coincidences? Is he trying to hide his murder by, murdering people differently? Yeah, Bundy traveled a lot, and, I think that's why people are noticing that these bodies are being found off of the major interstates. I was looking to see if I could find out exactly how far off the interstate they were, but haven't I don't think I've found, like, an act I didn't look at a map, I should have just looked at a map. Um, so in the 3rd week of March, 2 long missing women finally reappeared under tragic circumstances, adding to the tally of the dead. In New Haven, Connecticut, on March 20th, residents living near Woodlot on the city's west side noticed a foul odor and stumbled upon human remains in a brushy area behind a home. Police were called, and the remains were in an advanced state of decomposition, indicating that the body had been there through the winter. And see, this is another thing. Um, the snow is melting up there, and people are finding things. Hey, Ninny, how are you today? Thanks for joining us. So you're from Massachusetts. What are you hearing on the news there? That's what I'd like to know. Like, I know they keep saying this is not a serial killer, but what I'm discovering is that there's just statistically like this huge improbability that people are going to find all these bodies um, at the same time. Um, and I've been trying to think of a way to like, how could this possibly be? And as I was reading through my notes here, I realized, the snow is melting. And in the Northwest, I don't know when the snow starts melting for sure, but here in Alaska, we've still got snow on the mountains at least. But I think a couple years ago, they found a body on the side of like where the snow plows pushed the snow, and it was underneath the snow. And when the snow started melting, um, that's how the body was discovered. And it just kind of makes me wonder, like, aside from the suitcase incident, like these are just like remains that are found on the side of the road. I mean, then the some people are, going missing and then their remains are found a few days later. So, I don't know. Nanny says that they are natural reasons. That's what they're saying on the news out there, that um, this large amount of bodies that are being found is natural somehow. See, I don't buy that, and I think that's why it keeps getting talked about. Um, I've watched I don't know how many different channels talk about this, and they're all saying the same thing. How is it possible that this amount of people, are dying all at the same time in this same general area? It's kinda scary, and Um, so one of the things I'm going to talk about in a little while is the idea. It's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. It's a term used to where we start to like put things together that shouldn't be grouped together. Um, and I think in my thumbnail I called it death clusters. And if you know anything about like the way they monitor who gets cancer and stuff like that, every once in a while there'll be like a cancer cluster where there's an abnormal amount of people who have cancer or get diagnosed with cancer in a small area. And right now, this is essentially a cluster. This is a cluster of people. I think typically when people are murdered out of like just, a random altercation or whatever, the police are notified almost immediately, and they know who the suspect is pretty immediately. Um, but it seems like the snow is melting and people are being found that have, you know, families looking for them. It's pretty tragic. I know a couple of the people have gone missing for a couple of days and then they're found. Um, but you never know anymore. There could be killers anywhere you go. Like the most normal person you can imagine meeting or talking to, that's basically the number one suspect if you're going to be thinking about who's a killer, you know, because these people seem normal. So the Groton police made an arrest that appeared to solve the mystery of Wormser's death. And this is whenever I decided that, oh, this must not have been a serial killer thing after all. Um, in a twist that tempered the broader serial killer fears, Wormser's own roommate was arrested and charged after evidence linked him to the crime. Tragically, that suspect died in custody shortly afterward, denying the justice system a full resolution. Investigators indicated the killing was a contained incident and an abhorrent but domestic murder, not the work from a roaming predator. Yet, even as Groton breathed a hesitant sigh of relief, that killer, that a killer wasn't actually on the loose. Um, the case's inclusion in the spat of bodies that have been discovered in the area. Um, if one of these victims died by the hand of someone they knew, then what about the others, right? In the third week of March, two long missing women finally reappeared under tragic circumstances, adding to the tally of the dead. In New Haven, Connecticut, March 20th, residents near Woodlot, I think I was, yeah. Um, yeah, I did start talking about this. Yeah, so they smelled a foul odor, and then that's when they found the human remains in a bushy area behind a home. Police were called, and the remains were in an advanced state of decomposition, indicating that the body had been there through the winter. 5 days later, on March 25th, authorities confirmed the remains were those of Denise Leary, a 59-year-old local woman who had been missing for over 6 months. Leary had disappeared the previous September. She reportedly struggled with paranoid schizophrenia and had wandered away from her residence. The discovery of her body after so many months brought a sad closure to her family, but it also fueled the growing perception that New England's woods were yielding body after body as the seasons changed. Leary's death, while certainly mysterious, had elements that suggested it might not be an act of serial violence, given her mental health condition. The other possibility is that she just became disoriented and died of exposure in the woods. Her death was going unnoticed until the snow melted in spring. Um, Still, without an official cause released, locals couldn't help but add her name to the lengthening list of suspicious deaths. Yeah, I think people don't. Maribel says, I think they should warn people to pay attention. And I think this is the thing. Everybody should pay attention wherever you go. Um, I was reading about two girls who were murdered when they lived in a small town in Delphi. Um, is it Illinois or Indiana? Delphi, Indiana. They lived in a small town, like 3,000 people, and they go out for a walk one morning. They're walking in the, I guess they have some trails with an old bridge, a train bridge, and they wanted to actually go out to the bridge, and they did, but then they get killed. And it just reminds me of my own childhood. Olga says Indiana. Yeah, it's Delphi, Indiana. The girls were 14 and 13 years old. And they had no choice but to do what this guy said with a gun. And, when I was a kid, I would ride my bike all around town. I lived in a town with like 300 people. So there was probably 12 kids in the whole town, and we all like played together. And some families were allowed to go some places, some weren't. Um, and I know that there was a few times where I went further than I was supposed to. I went past the boundaries that were set for me. Don't go past the railroad tracks, don't go down past the big hill at the end of the road, those kinds of things. Don't cross the highway. Um, but as a kid, you don't know this stuff is real, that this stuff can happen at any one second. Um, these girls were just walking along, having fun, taking pictures, and then they see this guy walking like fast paced um, towards them across the same bridge that they just got to. So they can't like run away, because if they run, they're just going deeper into the trail. They can't run across the bridge because it actually takes some effort to, you know, make sure you don't fall. It's a pretty big drop. I think it's like over 600 feet. So um, the guy just like has a gun, and he says, "You down the hill," and he forces them into the woods off of the road, and then murders them. I don't think there was anything they could have done to possibly have gotten away. Um, it's a guy. I mean, it's a man. They were small kids. I guess they could have, I don't know. I think if you're ever in a situation where they're telling you to do something, you'll be okay. I would think it's safer to assume that you're not going to be okay and that you need to fight for your life. Throw your phone at their head, disorient them, run faster than them. I don't know. Like, my kids, they live with their mom, and they've been riding their bikes around town, and I'm worried, you know, somebody could just like, there's stories of women who are walking home from work in the middle of the day, and somebody just like pulls up in a car and then throws them in and takes off. These are real crimes that happen, and they're not unheard of, but we collectively try to avoid thinking about them, at least in any kind of like real sense. I know true crime is in every streaming service right now. Everybody is interested in this stuff, but I don't think we still grasp that this is real. Like, these are real people. These are real people who are mourning the loss of people they care about. These are real crimes committed by real people, and they shouldn't have ever happened. It's really scary. Yeah, if a gun is pulled on you, I don't know. Running, you could just get shot, but would it maybe be better to die that way than to get assaulted sexually and then murdered, slowly over several days. I was just reading about this transgender guy who was tortured for a month before he was murdered. I mean, and in a hotel of all places, this happened, and nobody reported anything. Nobody heard anything, and there was 5 people involved. One of them was a woman who catfished this guy. She lied about who she was and her interests and her life, and this guy thought she was his girlfriend. But if you scream, I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. I don't know. I think what I've read is that, screaming does a couple things. It one alerts anybody who's close by that something's wrong. Um, and it also will shock the senses of the person you're screaming next to, at least briefly. It could be a distraction that gets you away. I think if you hit somebody with anything in your hands, it's better than hitting them with your bare hands. So even if you just was holding a banana, it's going to be more effective. Um, I think I've even seen in the school scenarios with an active shooter, they say to start throwing stuff at them. Um, that distraction kind of like breaks their mental, like, whatever it is they're so set on doing, when they have to react, they have to stop thinking and react. Um, I wish I knew more that I can give you guys better advice on what to do, but um, I was thinking about this, like there's killers everywhere. I was backpacking in northern Montana in the middle of nowhere, literally 50 miles from the Canadian border, 100 miles from the nearest gas station. I was in a remote campsite that was, I found it by finding the mile markers, and it was just like um, an undocumented road. And I heard about this place from somebody else, and I'm there for a couple days. I'm there all by myself. Nothing out of the ordinary. A guy shows up in a small mobile home, and he's all chatty, and I don't think anything of it. And even whenever I notice he's got like a gun in his holster around his waist, and I look at it, and I must have looked a little bit shocked for a second. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just a 22. It's for snakes." And, as soon as he said that, I stopped worrying, and, it was no big deal. I'm still alive. But Richard Ramirez killed people with a 22 caliber pistol. Um, and a lot of these serial killers look for people in these places, rest stops. You're away from other places, campgrounds where there's no one else around. Even if you're with another person, it's not always enough. But I don't know. I guess my thoughts are, any way you can get away, do it. It's probably better if you run and they shoot you dead rather than being tortured and then murdered slowly. I'm going to add some music to this thing, I think. I've tried this a couple times, and it uses a little bit. No, I don't know. The thing with the music is that I can only have files that are so big, so I can't actually even play good stuff. This kind of reminds me of Harry Potter, but let's just see if it helps my storytelling. So where was I? We found the body behind the house and the brush. That was Denise Leary. right? Is that where we were? Then on March 26th, just the day after Leary was identified, another missing person case reached a grim conclusion in the tiny town of Foster, Rhode Island. Beneath the bare branches of the forest, searchers found the body of Michelle Romano, a 56-year-old woman who had vanished 8 months prior. Her remains were also located in a wooded area not far from her home, a rural community near the Connecticut border. Investigators noted suspicious circumstances around her death, and neighbors recalled that in the preceding weeks, their dogs had been acting strangely near the very spot where her body had ultimately been found. One resident recounted that his dog would sniff and whine towards the wood on their walks as if sensing something was wrong. It was a chilling anecdote for months of nature itself through the keen nose of a pet, which had been signaling that the body was there and could have been found sooner. With Romano's discovery, Rhode Islanders felt the collective chivalry that communities in Connecticut and Massachusetts were already knew too well. Tiny Foster, a population of only 4,500, had to grapple with an unexplained death in its midst. Was her death an accident, an abduction, or a murder? Nothing was ruled out publicly. An investigation into what happened and the final moments of Michelle Romano's life was launched, but with so many of these spring cases, answers are in short supply. Each discovery solved one mystery, the whereabouts of a missing person, only to replace it with another. How did they die, and who was responsible? By the end of March, at least 6 troubling cases had surfaced in 3 states. The victim profiles varied. The middle-aged and the young alike, some known to have led vulnerable lives and others not. Their causes of death, in most instances, remained undetermined. Sometimes it's just undisclosed, which authorities will have reasons not to share. In April of 2025, the morbid trend continued at an unsettling pace. What might have been written off as a fluke series of unrelated incidents in March started to look more and more like a pattern. On April 9th, Connecticut State Police were called in to a patch of woods near Killingly, Connecticut, where another set of unidentified human remains had been found. Details were sparse. That music is a little bit too creepy for me. I feel like I should just always talk about Chris Watts because I get more people here for those. I know I am pulling, kind of grasping at straws here about this serial killer thing, but it is really weird that so many bodies are discovered in a relatively small area. It is across 3 states, but New England, the states are smaller than some of the other ones everywhere else. And less than 2 weeks after that, on April 20th, in the city of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, a body was pulled from the Connecticut River near the city's border. The recovery operation carried out by local authorities added Rhode Island's capital region to the map of grim discoveries. The victim's identity was not immediately released, but it was another case of a person found dead in a waterway. And I think this was the third one. On April 22nd, 2 days later, cyclists and joggers on a popular bike path in Springfield, Massachusetts, come upon a woman laying motionless near a path along the Hall of Fame Avenue. Police and EMTs rushed to the scene. The woman, later identified as 45-year-old Megan Meredith, she was unresponsive and pronounced dead shortly after. And it looks like they did not publicly publicize the specific trauma or clues out of concern for the investigation into that case. So I don't know if they've updated that yet. The Hampton County District Attorney, Anthony Gallooni, swiftly announced that Meredith's death was a murder and assured residents that there was no threat to the public. So they're saying it was murder, but it's not a serial killer. So, but I don't think they have any suspects yet. The public is becoming jittery. When they hear that, there's nothing to worry about, but more and more bodies keep piling up. A few days after that, on April 27th, 2 more bodies were discovered. On the same day, in different states, Rocky Hill, Connecticut, a town along the Connecticut River, a recreational boater navigating the morning waters made a horrific find, a human body floating near the river's wooded shoreline. At 8:53 a.m., Rocky Hill police received the boater's report. They immediately summoned the chief medical examiner and a team to recover the body. At that time, the identity of this person was unknown and the cause of death was undetermined. The only things certain were the location and the fact of death. Police said the circumstances were under investigation. In Taunton, Massachusetts, on that same day, authorities were called to a separate scene where yet another body had been found. This time it was a man discovered in a wooded area near a local high school under construction. Taunton, a city in southeastern Massachusetts, would soon have 2 deaths making its headlines. This April 27th case and another unrelated murder in the same vicinity weeks earlier. But in the flurry of news, it was the April 27th discovery that counted among the mysterious cluster. The Bristol County District Attorney's Office later identified the Taunton victim as 51-year-old Samuel Stovall, a local homeless man who was known to frequent the area. He had been found floating in the river that runs through Taunton, and while an autopsy would determine the cause of death, there was no immediate speculation that his death might have been accidental or due to health issues or foul play. By the end of April, the toll of bodies discovered since early March had reached double digits. In roughly 8 weeks, at least 10 sets of human remains had been found under unusual circumstances across New England. The geographic spread was wide from Norwalk and New Haven on Connecticut's coast, up the Connecticut River Valley to Rocky Hill and Springfield, Massachusetts, across the Rhode Island border into Killingly, Connecticut, and Foster, Rhode Island. over the Atlantic shoreline, Groton, Connecticut, and Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and further to the east on the Massachusetts coast, Plymouth. Even Farmington, Massachusetts, west of Boston, had a case back on March 5th. A day before Paige Fannin was found, the woman's body had been discovered near a rail trail in Farmington under what was described as suspicious circumstances. And not to be forgotten, Maine had its own unsettling find on March 13th. The body of a woman washed ashore at Fort Williams Park in Cape Elizabeth. It took until May for the Maine State Police to formally identify her as 52-year-old Sari Carlson of Portland. Importantly, Maine authorities announced that there is no risk to the public. In Carlson's case, phrasing that strongly suggested her death was, while tragic, was not due to an at-large killer. The cause remains pending, but the implication was that it could not have been an accident or self-harm. Still, the inclusion of Maine meant that by early May, every state in New England except New Hampshire and Vermont have reported mysterious bodies being found. As May drew to a close, one more case added fuel to the fire. On May 30th, a Friday morning, early walkers in Edgewood Park in New Haven, Connecticut, not far from where Denise Leary had been found in March, discovered a body of a young woman near a park roadway. She was identified as 31-year-old Jasmine Wilkes of New Haven. Notably, investigators reported no apparent signs of trauma on Wilkes's body. There were no bullet wounds, no stab marks, no obvious injuries, much like Adriana Suazo's case. And if anybody knows how to say her name, her last name, it's Suazo. I think it's Suazo or Suazo. I'd like to get it right. But Wilkes was a healthy 31-year-old, and healthy 30-somethings don't simply drop dead outdoors without a reason. Her cause of death was left to the medical examiner to determine, with toxicology tests pending. The interim police classified it as an untimely death. Unexplained homicide. Unexplained, but not immediately deemed a homicide. Still, coming on the heels of everything else, the death of Jasmine Wilkes kept the public's worst fears alive, especially with Adriana Suazo and Paige Fannin adding to the list of young women found dead out in the open. When Suazo's tragic discovery on June 1st, and today is the 8th, so just 1 week ago, last Sunday, right? That was last Sunday. Yep. The first was last Sunday. So her tragic death on June 1st pushed the tally of strange deaths to 13 in the eyes of the media. 13 bodies since March across 4 states, a number laden with ominous overtones. Suazo's case especially struck a nerve, perhaps because of her youth and the perplexing circumstances. Her family members described her as vibrant, loving. She was a firecracker full of life, and they were completely baffled as to what had happened. She had no connection to the suburb where she was found. One of her sisters said she last spoke to Adriana on May 29th and had no inkling of trouble. After Adriana's body was found, her distraught sister, Melanie Pizarro, voiced what many families of victims feel. "I just want to know the truth," she said, about what happened to her. My family wants closure. Melanie suspected that someone else was with Adriana around the time of her death. Maybe not a murderer in the classic sense, but at least a witness who wasn't forthcoming. The Suazo family's pain and plea for answers were a poignant reminder that behind each of these cases is a real person. It's a real tragedy. It's not just a dot on the map. From the onset of all of this, law enforcement faced immense pressure to determine if these cases are connected or not. Each time a new body was found, the question arose, is this the work of one guy, one killer, one perpetrator? Each time a police spokesperson has offered a careful reassurance that so far no evidence ties these incidents together. The Connecticut State Police repeatedly told reporters that no information at this time suggests any type of connection between the remains discovered in their state, and emphasized that there is also no known threat to the public at this time. Meredith's murder in Springfield, the local district attorney stated unequivocally that there was no reason to believe that the Massachusetts cases were related. Hampton DA Anthony Galini went on record saying that there was no indication that these events are connected in each to each other, and nor are they part of any larger public safety threat. The officials are publicly leaning towards the view that these are independent tragedies. Behind the scenes, investigators are certainly exploring all angles. The potential serial killer situation, authorities typically compare cases for commonalities, the modus operandi, victim profiles, causes of death, disposal methods, and geographic patterns. So let's consider what they're seeing. Victim demographics. Most of the deceased were adult women ranging from the age 20 to late 50s. However, there was also one male victim. There is the possibility that they don't always stick to one gender. The New England cases spanned a wide age range, and it includes to both sexes. The causes of death, this is crucially was not uniform. In fact, several cases it wasn't even determined yet. So there's some cases we don't even know if they're connected. We don't know what the cause of death is, so we can't say for sure. The locations and dump sites, here we did see a loose pattern. Many were found in wooded or vegetated area, parks, forest, brush near homes, or in the water and rivers and coastlines. This could suggest a perpetrator who disposes of bodies in the out-of-way spots to avoid detection. One notable observation was how several discovery sites aligned roughly along the major highways I-95, which runs through Norwalk and New Haven, Pawtucket, and near Plymouth. I-90 connects New Haven, Rocky Hill, and Springfield. This geographic spread could fit the scenario of a killer using highways to quickly travel and dump victims across jurisdictions. If you remember killers like Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, he killed people up and down California, primarily to throw off the investigation because the precincts weren't all connected. One county, one city, one side of the city, all different police stations, and this was in the 70s and 80s. So we didn't have the internet. There was a lot less communication. It would take days or weeks to get information from each other. There was no shared databases, even within the same state. So if you can imagine, in this day and age, it's much better. There is data being shared, but it's probably harder to get shared data across state lines versus, city jurisdictions and stuff like that. But it's helpful to step back and remember a critical point. Statistically, most homicide victims are not killed by strangers, let alone a single serial predator. In fact, studies have shown that approximately 80% of murder victims know their killer. Many victims are killed in contexts of domestic violence, arguments, or interpersonal conflicts. So when a slew of body is found, the initial stance of experienced investigators is often that it's likely a tragic coincidence, unless evidence emerges to prove a serial killer at work. This is not to say serial killers don't exist. They do, and New England has seen its share, but they are the exception. So therefore, detectives are still examining each death and trying to see if there is any link to those. If Denise Leary had mental health issues and had been missing for months, they might hypothesize her death was accidental. If Paige Shannon left her belongings by a riverbank, one theory could be suicide by drowning. These are just possibilities. Only an autopsy and formal investigations can confirm those possibilities, plausible or not. So the public is naturally gravitating to more terrifying scenario of nameless killer. The police and forensic experts proceeded methodically. Public conversations took on life of its own. New Englanders are looking at daily news updates and started to see the pattern in the chaos, whether it was truly there or not. Social media groups and forums spring up dedicated to tracking the New England serial killer theory. One Facebook group, initially titled New England's SK for serial killer, gathered 10,000s of followers overnight. But it's easy to see why people might be frightened. The imagery alone is chilling. Bodies in a suitcase, bodies in rivers, bones found in the woods. It invokes memories of infamous unsolved cases and legendary serial killers like the Long Island serial killer. They believe they have a suspect for that, the Gilgo Beach murders. But they found those bodies relatively close to each other, so it was easier to assume that the killer was dumping his bodies in the same place. Another name floated in discussion was Israel Keyes, one of the more terrifying serial killers in recent U.S. history because of his nomadic style. He confessed in 2012 multiple murders across the country between 2001 and 2012. He had no single pattern of victim type or location. He murdered both men and women in different states, from Vermont to Washington to Alaska, and often killed far from his home, stashing kill kits in various states to use later. But he is proof that killers can hide themselves by not doing what they say serial killers are supposed to do. He adapted. So maybe Israel Keys wanted to kill the same people the same way, but because he knew that that's what police look for and investigators look for, he chose something different and adapted his killing methods to avoid detection. The Long Island serial killer predominantly killed sex workers who advertised online. I think the Long Island serial killer is more typical of a serial killer. But yeah, I think I've kind of talked about everything I can, and I guess this one was kind of a boring topic. I guess it would be better if we had more information. Olga says, I wonder what this one will do if would not be caught faster. I think every time there's a murder, I think it investigators learn from it. But I think the same thing is happening for killers. They're also learning and adapting. Israel Keys is 100% proof of that. And a lot of times people get away with these murders, and it's scary to find. Like, I've been doing a lot of trivia for a long time, and I keep finding these like obscure cases that I don't know too much about. And there's a lot of stories that, it's a middle of a day, and, that's when things are supposed to be safe, and they get abducted, tortured, and murdered. So let's see if I can find something else we could talk about real quick before I leave here in about 20 minutes. Maybe I'll pull up some of my story stuff. So if you're a member on my channel, you probably saw the story that I wrote of the Delphi case. I kind of wrote it as a story. And I only shared a little bit of it because I haven't figured out the actual word count for how many I'm allowed to, how long of the content is that I'm allowed to share or whatever. But and Maribel says, yeah, there's a lot of killers that have not been caught, and it's scary. Like when you think about how long the Golden State Killer, he was called the original Night Stalker and the East Area Rapist before he was caught as the Golden State Killer. It took them almost 20 years, 40 years or something like that. I think it's 40 years before they caught him. And one of the most interesting cases that I find in the story of this serial killer is he murdered a lawyer and his wife, who was an interior decorator, and there was like all these conspiracy theories about the way this one particular knot was tied that was used to strangle her. It was called a diamond knot. It's a lanyard knot. It's something you see probably on a drapery cord or something like that. It's kind of a fancy knot. I think it's also called a Chinese knot. But there was these weird theories because that man was basically he was on the stage to be a judge. He was trying to become a judge. Let me see. Ooh, I know. Maybe we can watch some of my shorts. So these are some of the shorts that I've been covering.
In December of 1948, an unknown man's body was found slumped on Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia. The man had no identification, and all the tags were removed from his clothing. The only clue was a scrap of paper hidden in his secret pocket with the words, "Tamam Shud."
It doesn't look like it's actually playing on this.
Is ended in Persian. Investigators traced this scrap to a rare book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar.
Yeah, I'm having a glitch here, it looks like, guys. I don't know. Can you guys see the short? It's supposed to be playing.
That they likely had
Says it's
identified
sharing,
him as Carl
but I
Webb,
don't see it on my screen here.
43-year-old electrical engineer from Melbourne. If this finding is confirmed, it finally gives a name to the long unidentified
You guys don't see
man.
anything?
Though how and why he
that's
died
crazy.
on that beach still remains an enduring mystery. He slipped in under the cloak of night, attacking four women in mere minutes
$80 a month
before
for this.
dawn on January 15th,
It's always
1970.
like every single time.
It just breaks. Yeah, see,
It started with one body.
oh, that's why I think we removed that. Let me try one more time here. Oh. You might just hear it because of my microphone.
Pocket with the words, "Tamam Shud."
Ah, now it's working, right?
Meaning it is ended in Persian. Investigators traced this scrap to a rare book of poetry.
I think it's working now.
The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, which turned up nearby.
Have you guys heard of the Somerton?
In that book, they found a mysterious code scribbled in the back and a telephone number belonging to a local nurse. Despite these tantalizing leads, the man's identity and the meaning of the code have eluded authorities for decades.
I'm thinking about doing a longer video.
Theories swirled that he might have been a Cold War spy or a jilted lover. But nothing could be proven. For over 70 years, he was simply known as the Somerton Man. Then in 2022, research using DNA and an old hair samples announced that they likely had identified him as Carl Webb, a 43-year-old electrical engineer from Melbourne. If this finding is confirmed, it finally gives a name to the long unidentified Somerton Man. Though how and why he died on that beach still remains an enduring mystery.
He slipped in under the
But that guy, what's interesting about that story, that man was seen on the beach, like I think in a suit, the day before, like alive, just laying on the beach in a suit or something. And lots of people walked by him. They didn't think he was dead, at least. Somebody even reportedly saw him smoking a cigarette. But they found like weird things on his body. There was no identification, obviously. There was this little passage from some kind of rare book or something that was in there, and it really fueled the like he was some sort of spy that got murdered.
cloak of night, attacking 4 women in mere minutes. Before dawn on January 15th, 1978, police received a call about an incident at the Chi Omega House on the Florida State University campus. Responding officers found a scene of panic and carnage. 4 members had been attacked around 3 a.m. 2 of them, Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler, survived, but they were severely injured. Kleiner's jaw had been broken in multiple places. Chandler suffered significant head injuries. Kleiner recalled waking up when her attacker came into her room, but being unable to see him or defend herself. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy were not so fortunate. Bowman was strangled with a nylon stocking and severely beaten. In Levy's case, forensic evidence showed clear signs of sexual assault.
I got a call from my mom. "Rhea, did you hear?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Blaze is missing." And then my mom said, "Rhea, he was with this guy named Sam Woodward." I screamed in the phone, "He what?"
This is a disturbing.
Well, hello, ladies.
That's the killer.
And she was like, do you know this guy? And I said, yes, I know this guy. He's crazy. He was drawing guns in his notebook in class.
Yeah, he got out of the car, and I got out of the car too. I shouted out, Blaze, Blaze, but I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything.
This is terrifying.
That voice sounds
the moment kind of thing. Yeah, dude, let's hang out. Since you and I were friends when we were at OSHA.
Whether you were ever the aggressor in fights with your brother.
I can't recall that I was in almost all or most instances. I really can't believe, or rather, I can't remember that there ever was an instance except for no.
After 19-year-old Blaze Bernstein was killed in January 2018, the judge right now, just minutes ago, issued a sentence, life without the possibility of parole for Samuel Woodward, who was convicted of killing Blaze Bernstein back in July for stabbing his former Orange County School of the Arts classmate 28 times because he was gay.
His family is finally weighing in. What have you found out?
I've been following.
Yeah, we just got this statement from them within the last 5 minutes, a prominent family from Maryland, and I want to read it to you. This is what they say. Unfortunately, we cannot comment on news reports regarding Luigi Mangione. We only know what we have read in the media. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson, and we ask people to pray for all involved. We are devastated by this. You know,
She needs to hear what happens.
There, I'm going to skip some of these.
On a seemingly ordinary Wednesday morning, in a sweeping warning from federal authorities, a sinister network of online predators known as 764 is targeting children as young as 9 through popular platforms like Roblox and Discord. Investigators say these predators befriend unsuspecting teens, then manipulate them and coerce them into escalating acts of cruelty, producing explicit sexual content, cutting themselves, even harming family pets, all while broadcasting their torments in twisted online watch parties. FBI Assistant Director David Scott calls the group's actions one of the most disturbing threats he's encountered. Over 250 federal investigations are currently underway. Each one is more shocking than the last. In one chilling case, a teenage honor student from Connecticut allegedly aided in bomb threats to her own community after being ensnared by 764 devotees overseas. Authorities discovered images of her self-mutilation and grim tributes to the group. Agents described members of 764 and its offshoots as nihilistic violent extremists who seek to sow chaos and bring down society. They gain status among each other by sharing graphic evidence of their victims' suffering. Experts say parents must remain vigilant, watch for abrupt shifts in moods and suspicious activity online. Unexplained.
I'll give you guys a sneak peek on one of the shorts I've been working on, and then I'm gonna get out of here. So, got to get back to the right screen.
Flower-lined facade of an Austrian suburban home lay a secret dungeon built for unspeakable sin. In 1984, Josef Fritzl lured his 18-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, into a newly finished cellar, pretending that he needed help fixing the door. With a sudden push and the hiss of ether on a cloth, Elizabeth's world went dark. Fritzl locked her in the underground chamber he had spent years constructing beneath their family home. For 24 years, Elizabeth existed in perpetual night as her father's prisoner. He repeatedly raped her in that cramped cellar, fathering 7 children by his own daughter. 3 of those children never saw sunlight, born and raised in that dark, dank basement with the mother that they can never truly see.
I've ever heard.
Upstairs, Fritzl played the concerned grandfather, even finding infants on his doorstep and bringing them to his oblivious wife as adopted foundlings. Meanwhile, in the dungeon below, Elizabeth told the little ones about the world outside, a world that they could not see, even as water dripped from the cellar walls and the air grew thin. Their rescue came by chance in 2008 when one of the secret children fell gravely ill and had to be taken to a hospital. Elizabeth begged her father for the girl's life to be saved. Faced with crisis, Fritzl reluctantly allowed it, inadvertently exposing his hidden family. When the truth emerged, the world recoiled at the depth of depravity. Josef Fritzl will spend the rest of his life behind bars, but the sentence Elizabeth and her children endured will last a lifetime.
What's in the news? So what's in the news, Olga? I'm trying to look to. What? 2,000 National Guards to California. Oh, shoot. Well, this is interesting. Breaking news. Let me see if I can find a news clip. I'll play it. Is this something to do with ICE? Yep. All right, I'll play some news real quick. Hey, Ninny. I'm glad you're still here. I don't know. I think I'm going to try to have another live this week that might be a little more interesting. I think they just always go better when there's more people here. We end up all talking about stuff, and it just makes it a little more fun. And I've only been doing live streams for a couple months. I think I'm getting better. I can at least remember to look at the camera every once in a while and also look at the chat. I'm getting better at it. I just don't really know how to present the information the way that people like it. And I don't really like to share other people's content because I end up with like audio copyright issues and I have to delete little sections out of my stuff. So I just don't bother, but I might revisit that and try doing that again. Because I do watch other channels and I think I get a lot of information from that. Let me see. I think, where is it? Bing videos. Here we go. Here's some news.
He, former acting ICE director and former federal prosecutor. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us. First, I just want to get your thoughts on the response right now that we're seeing in Los Angeles. Folks in cars trying to get through on the 101 being stopped by protesters or rioters, depending on who the person is.
This was actually an hour ago.
Yeah, what is happening here is really awful, and I think what makes it so awful is the conduct of both Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass on this, because they are taking the side of rioters, as you know, sort of bringing us back to 2020 BLM, and they're putting the public safety secondary to their political agenda, which is open borders. It is so shameful, and I think President Trump earlier talked about sort of that the incompetence of Mayor Bass and Gavin Newsom, but it's so much worse than this. This is malevolence. They are not even trying to stop this. They're speaking out on behalf.
This looks interesting.
The undisputed shake of the summer is back.
Trump says he hasn't ruled out sending Marines to California.
Rachel Scott was able to speak with him. We have some of that sound we'd like to listen to now.
Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart. They spit, we hit. And I told them, nobody's going to spit on our police officers. Nobody's going to spit on our military, which they do as a common thing. They get up to them this far away and then they start spitting in their face. That happens, they get hit very hard.
All right, those are strong words from the president. I believe the quote was, they spit, we hit. I want to bring in Alex Stone right now, who is at our bureau in Los Angeles. Alex, I know you have been in touch with the Los Angeles Police Department, and I want to talk a little bit about how they feel about this. We know they told us they made some arrests last night, but they did not talk about being overwhelmed and needing federal help. And also, joining in the chorus there of saying we don't need the National Guard here is the governor of the state, Gavin Newsom.
This is the story of the one.
All right, guys. Well, I got to get going.
Like Ranger, she won't.
But definitely check out the news, see what's going on with that. But I know a couple of you showed up late. I don't know. I guess maybe this topic isn't really that interesting. If I had more time, I could probably get more like videos to share. Or I'm just going to have to learn how to react to other people's videos so that I can at least show you something and talk about other things besides, I only know the stuff that I research, and I don't know. I feel like it's boring watching my own videos. So, but maybe I could start doing that. We can, do some deep dives into some of the more infamous serial killers like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, or something like that. I don't mind talking about Chris Watts. That is an interesting case, but I just feel like every time I talk about it, I'm only like getting more people to beg me to talk about it more. And I think I've said everything at least a lot already, like repetitively. I'm saying the same things with Chris Watts related content. There's not a lot of new information aside from, somebody in the family's dying, or getting sick, or Chris getting hurt. Like, there's just really not going to be any new information. I don't think Nicole Kessinger is ever going to get reinvestigated. I haven't figured out exactly why she wasn't investigated in the first place, but it feels like she must have given them some information and got some kind of, deal where she wouldn't be, investigated. But, I will never know. And I don't feel like it's really my place to say she's guilty. I just know there's a lot of things that make her look like she knew a lot of information. And if she was there or she knew things, she's never said it in public. And it's just, I don't know. I can think of new ways to tell this, restate this information about that case, but, it's just like rehashing things that's already been hashed out a million times. And that's what Chris Watts Island really is, the retelling of the same information. Somebody's got more information. That's going to be the person who was involved in the murder. He knows more than anyone, but we don't know if he's ever going to say anything that's actually the truth. He's had how many years to think about what he did and how he can word it and how he can spin the story to include other people maybe. I just think he's had a lot of time to, work on his lies. And we know two things. He was a liar and a murderer. You can't trust a liar. So I don't know. I am interested in the case. I just feel like I need a break from Chris Watts for a while because I don't know. I just don't like repeating myself over and over. And I don't like just making baseless information available, like just saying, well, this happened because this, and this, and then I have a whole list of possible things, but I can't verify any of those things. There's a lot of rumors, and I don't like just making up new rumors or spreading rumors unless I can verify it. Like, I know she deleted her phone. That's the only thing I can really verify. I don't believe they have found him yet. That case is a huge tragedy. It reminds me a lot of the Chris Watts case. Ninny asks about Travis Decker. He murdered his 3 daughters, and it's just unreal how it happened. The guy is seen in a door cam acting all normal, ringing the doorbell, asking for his kids. He's got a court order saying that he has parenting time, and he takes them to a campsite and murders them. And it's just unfathomable. How could a father do that to their kids? It's just unreal. And the more I started writing about it, I was going to do a whole thing on it, and I just can't do it because it's just too emotional. Even for me, I just can't do it. When I started reading about how the kids were active in their community, they did community theater. It just started like really, I don't know. It just, I don't know how the mother could, talk about it the way she does, or I think it was actually the attorney for the mother, but there's a few things out there where the mother of these kids still has still cares about the man who murdered her own children. And I'm like, how could you even? But it was her attorney who said that. Yeah, it's just, but I urge you guys to keep looking into that case. It's a heartbreaking case, and it's, I hope they find the guy, and I hope he gets to suffer in prison for what he did. It's just another example of why it's hard to trust people, even the people the people you think are normal. This guy had some mental health issues, but I think the court should have been aware of that and then had somebody closely monitoring him. And if he did have a caseworker monitoring him, or some OCS, like a child service person monitoring the situation, they weren't doing a very good job. And, in their defense, you can't just assume everybody's a killer. So I don't know. The guy murdered his family, and he's took off on foot into like a couple million acres of forest in Washington State, and they're trying to find him. But he's a trained military person, and he's got a lot of history. Like, he's got a lot of knowledge on how to live off the grid, and he's probably not going to be found very easily. But they've got drones flying over the forest. They're checking all the trails that lead away from where the campground was, where the kids were murdered. They found like all the evidence of, a struggle there at the campsite. They believe the girls were murdered there, and then they were just left on the side of the road. It's just horrible, horrible, horrible. But anyways, guys, I do really appreciate you being here. Make sure you hit that like button a bunch of times before I close out the live. But I got to get off the phone and take care of some things. But I'll try to plan better for next weekend. Like, if I can just get a couple of videos of some police interviews or something. I think I have one on the Murdaugh guy, Alex Murdaugh, his initial interview with the police. That guy is pretty disturbing also. Might be fun to watch that with you guys. But anyways, as always, be kind, stay vigilant, and I'll catch you in the next video.